Raising the Bets is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to Raising the Bets, a family podcast of pirates and penguins. We're a Catholic couple raising 5 kids outside of Boston. Join us as we share the joys and challenges of marriage, homeschool, our adventures near and far as we make sense of the world and experience the best parts of our culture. I'm Don Bettinelli.
And I'm Melanie Bettinelli.
Oh, well, welcome back to another week of Raising the Bets, right? We've had another eventful week.
Always, never a dull moment.
Never a dull moment. So let's start off with you telling me about what you did this week with the kids. You went to a program outside of the home.
Yeah, so the Massachusetts Audubon Society does some summer programs at a nearby town of Duxbury on the beach. Most of their programs for kids are expensive, but Duxbury is great because they have a free program that's really aimed at adults, but they don't mind if kids show up. They're flexible. And so it's this particular week's program was on barrier beaches. And so we learned all about the geology of barrier beaches, including a nice lecture about glaciers with maps and illustrations and everything. We learned about the specific barrier beach and then other barrier beaches. We learned a little bit about the ecology of barrier beaches. We learned about birds and sea life, and it was really, really good. The guide is very informative and very kid-friendly. He obviously tailors his presentations based on who shows up. And the kids, you know, they tolerate the lecture. Some of them better. Some of them are interested. Some of them are less interested.
Yeah.
But the really fun thing is that we're at the beach. And so once the program is over, which is about an hour and a half, maybe, then they can play in the waves.
So you guys drive down there in the morning, park, and then there's a couple hours, right? Is that what it is, or an hour? How long is the presentation?
I think it was started at 9:30 and went to about 10:30 or 11.
Okay, so Duxbury Beach, the town of Duxbury, is about what, maybe 40 minutes from here?
Yeah, it's about 45
minutes from our house. So, I mean, the closest ocean is about 25 minutes from our house. But so Duxbury is down the coast a little bit. And that's where I used to go when I was a kid. It's probably one of the best beaches around.
Yeah. Now, the actual parking at the beach is permit only. But where the program is, there's a very long bridge, and the other end of the bridge has free parking, especially if you get there early, which we did. So we had no trouble parking. We did have a little bit of trouble getting out, because the parking lot had filled up and people had parked behind me. And I drive a very big 10-passenger van.
Ford Transit van.
And the Kia Sport vehicle that parked behind me did not leave me a lot of space for maneuvering. Fortunately, there was a very nice mother with 2 kids who had pulled into the parking lot and parked in the middle, like down the middle, like the Kia had. And I was looking at her car and a car that was parked on the side and thinking, there is no way I'm going to get between those 2 cars. And she kind of heard me saying this, and she said, oh, you know what? If you can, hang out for a few minutes, I can pull out of this space and then you can get by and then I can take your space. So she also very kindly spotted. I don't know that I could have actually pulled out of this parking space without hitting the Kia if she hadn't been there to spot for me. She was like, you've got 3 inches left. You can do it. And it was like, a 12-point turn, but I eventually did get out of the parking space.
So do you drive across the bridge to the parking?
No, we
have to walk across the bridge.
We had a little wagon. We put in a cooler with our water bottles and a bottle of lemonade, and we had a bag full of sandwiches and a bag full of beach towels, and all the kids had backpacks to put their clothes in and stuff. So we hiked across the very long causeway, and it was great because from the bridge you could see gulls and cranes and other water birds, and on the way back at the end of the day we actually saw schools of fish and cormorants
Cool.
diving for the fish. So there was good nature spotting going there. And then on the beach, we also took a little walk down the beach and we saw some piping plover that were nesting on the beach. They are a not an endangered species, but a threatened species. And so they have the...
Hey, you, plover.
They have the nesting areas...
Take off, or I'm giving you one another kisser.
They have the nesting areas roped off, but they also have a volunteer there to kind of wave people along to keep you from lingering too close to the nest.
Move along, folks. No plovers to see here.
Exactly. So the guy who led the program challenged the kids at the end. I thought this was a really great thing. He said, try to find 4 different seabirds and identify what they eat based on the shapes of their bills, which was fun. And we managed to do it. We found the piping plovers, the cormorants, the seagulls, and some sandpipers.
Cool. And the nice thing is because Duxbury is a barrier beach. I mean,
Right.
Duxbury Beach is a barrier beach. So that makes it easier to teach about it.
Right. So he had a space set up on a picnic table with like maps and charts and a whiteboard for writing on and stuff, and a bunch of guidebooks for like looking up birds and things. And he had some binoculars. But then like in the middle of the talk, he actually led us out up to the sort of top of the dunes where you could see both sides and we could talk about the geology of the particular beach. So it was very like local, learn about how this particular landform that we're on right now formed.
So which kids responded better than others? Were more attentive? I mean, it was Anthony, like as usual, like boop, I'm out.
No, actually, he was pretty good. In fact, he made a couple of comments that were insightful and on point, and Ben made a comment that was insightful and on point. Bella, of course, chimed in. She's very, very willing to chime in. She is not the shy homeschooled kid. I think Sophie was a little bit more reticent, but she was definitely interested. Lucy,
This is the youngest.
I mean, she's 6.
Yeah.
A lot of this was over her head. She just really wanted to go play in the water.
Yeah.
They all really wanted to go play in the water by the end. It was a little bit longer than I think.
Long for that for little kids, about the right length for adults.
Right. But you know what? I always figure that even if the kids aren't absorbing everything that's being taught, I'm absorbing it, and then I can sort of regurgitate it at a later date and remind them of what we've learned.
Right.
So it's a great learning experience for me too. I mean, I love learning about this stuff as well. It's one of the great things about homeschooling is I never stop learning.
Right. You get to be part of it. So, all right. So after the program is done, you guys headed out to the beach to do the summer swimming thing.
Right. And it's a really, really good beach. Because it's a barrier beach, the inside of the beach, it's like a long, skinny island, essentially. And the inside looks out onto salt marshes and mud flats at low tide. And then at high tide, it's kind of a little bay. But then on the outside, you're right on the Atlantic Ocean with nothing between you and the waves. And so there was good surf. The kids loved being out in the waves. We brought 2 picnic blankets. We laid them out. We might as well not have brought 2 because I don't think anybody sat down for more than about 2 minutes. They were all in the water or building sandcastles or hunting for shells, roaming up and down the whole time.
Not even 2 minutes to stop to put sunscreen on.
Oh,
or as I call it, as a child of the 70s, suntan lotion, which
it's definitely not suntan lotion.
Yeah.
Anyway, yes, we forgot the sunscreen. And this was partly perhaps a feature of having been sitting for a while, and I blanked.
Yeah. I mean, it's see, this is the thing about when we were kids, when I was a kid, like, yeah, you might put some sunscreen on. Maybe you didn't. Some days, if you spent too much time in the sun, you'd get a little burn, but it would be not a big deal. nowadays, like if you don't put sunscreen on, you burn, just period. And I don't know if it's a feature of our combined, my Sicilian heritage combined with your Northern European skin.
I generally tanned as a kid, but I definitely got a couple of epic sunburns, especially when we went to the beach. And we did usually bring sunscreen and tried to put it on. And sometimes you'd put it on in the morning, but then you'd spend 8 hours on the beach and still get a burn.
Yeah. I'd burn occasionally as a kid, but not very often. Well, so
Sophie had a rash guard and didn't really get burned except on her face. Lucy didn't seem to get burned at all, maybe a little bit red on her face. And
right.
Bella wasn't too bad. One shoulder was kind of red and her face was kind of red.
She had a rash guard on too.
No, she didn't.
Oh, is that Sophie that was in the pictures?
That's Sophie.
Okay.
But Ben got a really bad burn. He's got the fairest skin. He got my mom's side.
Who's the fairest of them all? Ben is.
Yeah, I mean, when Ben was a baby, his skin was like white, like really white, not just like white people white.
He's blinding white.
And he still stands out. I mean, he spends as much time in the sun as all the other kids, and he definitely stands out as being really fair. And he has been in agony.
Not just oh, my sunburn hurts, but like we had to get medicated, like 2 different kinds of medicated lotions at the pharmacy.
He spent one night, the first night, he didn't get to bed until 10. He woke up again at midnight.
This is the kid who's asleep by 9.
Right.
Like, yeah.
He woke up again at midnight, was up until 3, and then woke up again at 5. So he was a wreck.
Right. And he was that way for several days. That was like what, last Tuesday, and then he wasn't sleeping well for like 3 days and just in pain. Like even as we record this, it's Sunday. Even yesterday he was complaining. He was complaining today even when you put some lotion on him.
Oh yeah, today he's been doing some like screaming and yelling, and
because we're just about to start the peeling stage.
Oh, he's peeling. Definitely peeling.
But he's also, I don't know, some kind of rash from one of the lotions.
I think something had camphor in it, and I suspect that's what he was reacting to. He got little
bumps,
like little white bumps all over him after I put.
So to add insult to injury, he's allergic to the lotion. So yeah. So lesson learned. And the nice thing is, as we said, is next time we go somewhere and we go to like whether my brother's house to swim in the pool or the beach, when we say stop and put sunscreen on, I almost said suntan lotion. Oh, stop and put sunscreen on. They'll say, "Oh yeah, I remember that time I had the really bad sunburn." Okay,
right, because the last time we went to the pool, and I did remember to put sunscreen on. But there was a lot of yelling and complaining. We just want to go in the pool. Why do we have to wait so long? This is horrible. It's awful. You're torturing us.
You are hurting me by making me not swim yet.
So I'm thinking that now there will be a little bit less protest, at least from some quarters.
We can only hope. Of course, they'll forget and they'll want to go, and then we have to remind them. So Sophie wasn't too bad. The Anthony was a funny one because Anthony is Mr. Stoic. Like, oh yeah, I have a sunburn. It hurts, but whatever. Like,
yeah, well,
he just like he doesn't complain about it. I mean, of all the things, he is the loud child, but he doesn't complain about with pain. He's the child who when he was 6, spent all day walking through museum with a knee that was hurting from Lyme disease, right?
Right, and this is the child who, when he got, I think it was his 8-month immunizations, the needle went into his big fat thigh. The shot went in. He kind of made a little face, a grimace face, and then the needle came out, and he started laughing. I'm not kidding you. This kid,
he is Mr. Stoic,
has a very high pain threshold.
No kidding.
So he did get burned. And I heard about it a couple of times, which means it was actually probably a bad burn. But like when he got poison ivy, he did not want to have to take the prednisone, so he just decided he was not going to complain about the itch.
I mean, this.
And he had a really bad case of poison ivy. I mean, it was all over.
Yeah, but he did not like the prednisone, so he was going to deal with it. He's going to suck it up.
Yeah.
I mean, power to him. So Sophie escaped most of the sunburn, but she still had plenty of reason to complain this week, didn't she?
Poor thing. Yes, poor Sophie. On Friday, she got braces.
Was it Friday? I guess it was Friday, because it's only been a couple days.
Yeah.
It seems longer.
it's
for her too, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's been hard.
So Bella already has braces. She's had braces for what, a year now?
Yeah, it's about a year since Bella got braces. Bella had a little bit easier though, because they put on the top braces and then they put the bottom braces on like 6 months later.
Right.
So she didn't have it like all in one fell swoop, but Sophie got both bottom and top braces all
so it
together.
Hurts. It's unfamiliar, which Sophie hates unfamiliar. And everyone is paying attention to her, which she also hates. So all these things together.
Right. She said like one of the worst things about it is like everyone constantly wanting to like look at her braces, talk about her braces.
Right. Because Bella has said that was one of the worst things for her. It was everyone constantly asking her, how does it feel? Let me see, et cetera, et cetera.
Don't pay any attention to me.
Right. But the poor thing is because her teeth are so painful, she's been having trouble finding anything she can eat. She had ice cream for breakfast yesterday.
Well, and it's especially hard because she's been going through a growth spurt and she's been having a hard time finding anything to eat like on normal days. Like, I've already eaten that today and I've already eaten that today and I've already eaten that today. And she doesn't want to eat the same thing twice in a day. And so we've been struggling to like keep her full.
Yeah. So on top of everything, she's hungry, but she's in too much pain to eat. And so we've been getting her the ibuprofen. And today was good. You remembered a couple hours before dinner, because right about dinner is when the ibuprofen wears off, whatever's in the timing was how she's taking it. And you remembered a couple hours before to tell her to take it.
Yeah, that worked better.
And so she was actually pretty good at dinner time. She was.
Yeah. And I think that generally the pain is easing up.
Yeah.
It's usually only about a couple of days.
Yeah, yeah. So hopefully she gets all the braces at once. And they said if she's very good about following the rules, which Sophie is, if Sophie's good about anything, she's good about following the rules. She'll have them off in 18 months, which is good. That'll be good.
So 18 months to 2 years, so it's not too bad.
Yeah, yeah. So that's what we've been doing this week, mostly.
That pretty much seemed to have taken up the whole week.
Yeah, it could have fills everything. I mean, with school and and that sort of stuff too. So let's talk about what we've been eating. It's our regular segment on what we've been cooking and eating.
Mm-hmm.
So the other night, last night, as we're talking about this, so Saturday night, we made fajitas.
Very good.
Yes, I used the recipe, mostly the recipe from America's Test Kitchen, from I think Cook's Country.
Yeah, the marinade used pineapple juice and soy sauce.
Yeah.
It was really good.
Well, the soy sauce has umami, so boom, you got an umami bomb there. And the pineapple juice, in addition to flavor, also breaks down the collagen, so it cooks it faster, so it gets it ready faster. Because we were using flank steak. I think their recipe uses skirt. So
yeah, skirt steak is actually a little tougher than flank steak, but the flank steak was on sale, so I grabbed it out of the sale bin.
Yeah. We cooked the vegetables indoors on the skillet. I cooked the meat out on the grill, but you cooked it on the skillet. Their recipe had you cook it on the skillet too, but it's just easier to.
You mean their recipe had the grill?
Yeah, sorry. Their recipe had you cook the peppers and onions on the grill, whereas we just cooked them in the skillet in the house. So
I feel like you have more control.
You do. Cooking onions on a grill is a pain in the neck. When you have to cut the thick slices and put toothpicks in. I mean, yeah, you get the grill flavor and all that sort of stuff, but frankly, it tasted good. And the meat, not cheese, the meat, the peppers and onions, some salsa, a little sour cream. It was all good. Some avocado. It was really good.
The fun thing was that Ben had fajitas, like he'd made fajitas at the scouting event.
Yes.
And they had served it with sour cream, and he'd actually tried the sour cream. He's not usually an adventuresome eater. And so he made sure that we had to have sour cream at the table, which we don't generally do that with Mexican food.
Right.
I didn't grow up with sour cream with Mexican food. I'm a Texan. But he insisted. And so he had the sour cream on it, and it was really fun to see him really getting into stuff that he was sort of bringing in a new idea from outside of our tradition.
You know what he said to me today as we were waiting for tonight's dinner to cook? He said, I think next time we get hot wings, I want to try one.
Oh, wow. That's huge.
That is big. I mean, again, this is the boy who would only eat things that are white and bland.
He was very, very picky.
Yes.
Up until just
like a few weeks ago. I'm not sure. What was there was just something that we had. Was it the Jamaican food that was kind of flipped a switch, I think? Or it could have been the fajitas at the Scouts.
He's been gradually, I've seen a gradual shift in being more adventuresome. Like your salsa, I think, introduced him to the idea that he could eat food that was kind of spicy.
Yeah.
And I think that eating it regularly has built up a little bit of tolerance for a little bit of heat.
Yeah.
And, he started off just like barely dipping a chip and then getting a little bit more and a little bit more. And,
yeah. I mean, it's been amazing just being patient with him, letting him, dinners where he didn't want to eat what we were eating, letting him go make a peanut butter jelly sandwich. We had to try first, had to take a bite or whatever.
We had a lot of peanut butter and jelly sandwich nights with him.
But not fighting him, just like at most fighting to get him to take a taste, but not fighting him on eating a portion. Oh, fine, go. I think that has worked. I think that has been the solution with him to take the pressure off.
I've always just said I don't want food to be a battle.
Right. As long as you're getting enough food in your belly to satisfy you, because they're not fat. All these kids, I mean, if you look at me, you'd expect all my kids to be heavy, but they're all slender. They're all slim. I mean, even Anthony, who's bigger kid, like bigger structure, bigger boned. Big bones, it sounds like a euphemism for fat, but he's not.
He actually has like a rib cage that when they were toddlers, he didn't have any extra fat on him, but his rib cage was bigger around than Ben's, and Ben is almost 2 years older than he is.
Right.
I mean,
so he'll always
big.
Yeah, he's always be, but none of them are fat. None of them have extra body fat on them. So I'm not worried about them, not getting good nutrition. You know what I mean? So I think that patience has paid off, and it will continue to pay off with all of them. So that's been good. The other thing we made this week was, now this was a recipe of our own design.
It was an experiment, you mean?
Yes.
Like, I had this idea based out of necessity because we had
eggplants. Yeah, we had eggplants that needed to be cooked before they went bad. We had some bulk Italian sausage that we got at the farmer's market last week. So it was fresh, it was good, and from heirloom pigs and all that sort of stuff, really good. And so we wanted to do something with it. So you came up with the idea of making a pasta sauce, a sausage pasta sauce, but using the eggplant in it. So the same way we make that sort of semi-Turkish, semi-Iranian eggplant dish that we made before, we talked about before.
Right. So I roasted the eggplant in the oven. I sliced it in half lengthwise, and then I scored it like all the way to the skin,
diamond
grid
shape
pattern.
Yep.
And then brushed it with olive oil and put it in the oven at like 450 degrees, like really roasted it. And then
until it was soft.
Until it was really soft.
A fork.
Then I added more olive oil with some garlic grated into it.
Yep.
And cooked it until it starts to crisp up on the edges, the upper edges.
Mm-hmm.
Like gets nice and brown and almost a little charry.
Right, the garlic will get a little crunchy. The exposed garlic, yeah. And so you scrape it all out of the skin, and then
discard the skin. You don't want
that's not good. And then what did you do for the sauce itself? Just a regular pasta sauce?
Yeah, just my regular tomato marinara sauce.
But added the. I
mean, my marinara has like anise and red pepper flakes in it, so
yeah,
it's kind of flavorful.
But so then you just added the eggplant to that. So what it does is it makes it silkier, richer.
Yeah, it added a really rich flavor and sort of a silky consistency. It was really nice.
And then add in you browned the Italian sausage?
I browned the Italian sausage in a skillet and then added it to the pot with the sauce.
Okay. And then just end. Over pasta. It was good. I mean, it was kind of rich. It was kind of rich. I'm not sure I had several servings, and some of the kids had But who ate it? So Anthony definitely had some.
Sophie tried it.
Sophie
she wasn't
tried
a huge fan, but
Yeah.
she tried it. Anthony tried it.
Yeah, Bella did not. I don't think Ben.
Bella does not do tomato sauces at all. She doesn't really like tomatoes. And Ben doesn't. Nah,
I don't know where that came from, but anyway.
I don't know.
But
They're all different.
they're all different. So it was good. I don't think I'd want to have it every time.
Oh no, this wouldn't be my standby, my standard, but
Yeah, but it was good. It was a good, for a change of pace. So
it was a fun experiment.
yeah, I'd give it a solid B.
Yeah,
solid B. So,
but the caponata that you made today with
Yes.
the more eggplants, that was an A+.
okay, let me tell you some about caponata. I have been obsessed with caponata for years, and let me tell you why. So I'm Sicilian. My dad is Sicilian. His parents are from Sicily, and I remember years ago when I was a kid, so like maybe 40 years ago, one of my aunts gave me this. We had been visiting, and she gave me this jar of something that it was caponata, and I didn't know what it was. I'd never had it before, and I tried it, and it was amazing. And all I remembered from it was there might have been olives, definitely olive oil. There was celery, some other things, maybe raisins. I don't know. And I didn't know what it was called at the time. And for years I've been trying to figure it out. And I kind of got the sense it's caponata. And a caponata is this. It's got the from the class of foods that Sicilians call agrodolce, which is sweet and sour. So it's got sweet and sour taste. It's vinegary, but also sweet. And every part of Sicily has a different caponata. I mean, just, you know how that is. And so I've been collecting recipes and didn't see anything I really liked. And then recently, Milk Street Kitchen had a recipe for a caponata. And they said, this is the one. This is the one that everybody should try to make. It's simple and it's really good. And I said, okay. But me being me, I couldn't leave well enough alone. I wanted to add in some of the things I knew were in there from my aunt's caponata. Of course. So you take the eggplant, you cube it up into 1-inch cubes, you cook it in a skillet until it's soft. So you put it in some olive oil and you cook it in the skillet until you stick a fork in, no resistance. Okay, set that aside. You take some a zucchini, in 1-inch cubes, cook it in the skillet same way. Put that with the eggplant. Then you take an onion, red bell pepper. And then I added a whole, they don't have you add tomato, but I took a fresh tomato we got from the market and I chopped that up. Tomato, a little bit of celery, and some tomato paste. Actually, no, not the tomato paste yet, but I put those in and you cook those up until they're soft. Then you add tomato paste, red wine vinegar, sugar, and then I added some both Spanish green olives, but also harissa olives. Harissa is a North African spice blend, which would have been, Sicily is sort of the crossroads between North Africa and Europe. So harissa would be something that would maybe be known there. Wouldn't be unfamiliar to people, I think. Certainly it's compatible with the cuisine.
Oh, definitely.
So added some of those olives, as well as some drained and rinsed capers, and put that in there, and you let that cook until it gets syrupy. The liquid has evaporated a little bit, and then you get like a syrupy thing. And then you add that back all together. You mix it together with all the other vegetables already you cooked. And then, so we let it cool, and because you can serve it either warm or room temperature. But let it cool, and then right before serving, ripped up a bunch of maybe half a cup, quarter cup, by the time you got done, about half a cup of basil leaves.
I think the more basil, the better. It's really good.
And it was sublime. It was really good.
The flavor profile reminded me a lot of like a sweet and sour pork, like that sweet sour with the bell pepper taste.
But a good sweet and sour, not like an overly sweet and sour from a mediocre Chinese restaurant, but like you have good. Well, your mom makes good sweet and sour.
My mom always made sweet and sour pork that was to die for when I was a kid.
This one, the balance between sweet and vinegar was so good. Yeah, that was the thing. And then I tried it before I put the basil in, just to see how it was, that sort of thing. But and it was good. But then when we added the basil, that that was the next level.
Oh yeah, the basil, like
It's not, I would
it
say,
went from being wow, this is really good, I can't stop snacking on it, to oh my gosh, this is heaven in a bowl. I'm going to eat the whole thing.
Yes. I mean, it was really, really good. And I'm glad that there's leftovers, but this definitely goes on the list for, I'm going to make this again. Because it was so good. And so glad. I put the additions, my changes into the recipe in Paprika. We use a recipe software, an app that's on both the Mac and on the iPad and the iPhone called Paprika. And it's really good recipe manager. But I put those changes in there, so next time we make it, we'll know that that those are my changes.
Excellent.
But oh man, and of course this time of year, the zucchini, the eggplant, the bell peppers, the tomatoes, all that came from the farmer's market. It's all fresh.
Oh yeah.
So this is the time to make that sort of thing. I mean, what else would I add to it? I might maybe rehydrate some golden raisins.
Ooh, or currants.
Or currants, yep. I'm
all about the currants.
I might think about some pine nuts.
Mm-hmm.
So, some pinole, to toast them up a little bit beforehand. Maybe, I don't want to mess with it too much. I don't want to overdo it. You know what I mean? I don't want you gotta. I might even take something out and put that in or something, like maybe instead of the capers, do the currants or something like that. But I'd want to soak the currants. Maybe soak them in something even. I have to think about that. Maybe soak them in the vinegar.
There's so much liquid in it. I think that they would, if you let it like cook and then sit, they would get that plump.
Well, I would soak them in the vinegar before throwing them in.
But see, I think they would plump up just be cooking.
Just cooking in it?
Just
you
cooking
think?
in the sauce.
I don't have a lot of experience cooking with currants, but...
Yeah, because when I put them in my moussaka, I just throw them in the tomato sauce and they plump up really nice and soft. Like you can't really tell the
I like the idea of having a little bit of the texture of something to chew a little there, because you want, because everything's a lot of the stuff in there is very soft, so it would be nice to have something that's got a little chew to it. So, and then we had like the baguette from the market and to eat it with. It was so good. It was better than the chicken I made. I made it was sort of a grill smoked chicken. The skin was a little rubbery. It came out wasn't as crispy as I like it.
Yeah.
And the chicken itself, I don't know, the texture was kind of odd.
It was almost like it was brined for too long, maybe.
I don't think it needed to be brined. We brined it. I don't think it needed to be brined.
Could be.
Yeah. Yeah, because you get that spongy texture that...
It was too moist. Although I think it'll be really good if we use the chicken in something.
Right. So they use the leftovers. Like kids didn't mind. They loved it. They would have eaten all of the chicken if we let them.
Yeah.
But if we use the chicken like in a curry or something, it'll be fine. So that's not a problem at all. So that's what we've been eating. And we're looking forward to stuff this week. We've got guests coming into town, so we'll have some food that we'll cook for them.
I'm having fun thinking of like, ooh, what can we serve? Company. We don't have company all that often, so it's kind of a treat for me to get to cook for company.
In fact, we're going to have to, I'm not sure, hopefully we'll be able to podcast after their next Sunday. Maybe we'll do it with them. Have them join us. Maybe not. Maybe they won't be interested in doing that.
I'm not sure that roping guests into podcasting is like really good host manners.
Like, oh, by the way, let me show you my recorder. All right. So that's what we've been eating. Hey, let us know what you've been eating. If you've been eating anything interesting, you're making some interesting food, we want to hear from you. What's a cool recipe? Maybe something we should try. Send us an email to betts, BETTS, @sqpn.com. We'd love to hear from you what you've been eating, and maybe if you try any of these recipes. And I'll try to remember to put the links to the fajitas and the caponata recipes in the show notes, although I think you have to be member of either of America's Test Kitchen or Milk Street to get either of those. So maybe you can sign up for a trial or something if you want that. But I'll put the links in. This is Dom Bettinelli, CEO of the StarQuest Production Network, with a special message seeking your support. StarQuest needs your help. Over the past year, we've grown by leaps and bounds. Every month, we produce dozens of shows covering numerous topics and all explore the intersection of faith and pop culture, which is the core of our mission. Some, like Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World, are among the most popular shows StarQuest has ever produced in all its 13-year history, and our newest shows, like American Catholic History, are catching fire with new audiences. We're fulfilling our mission of evangelization in a whole new way, but that success is in danger. We must reach the financial break-even point if we're going to continue. Creating, editing, producing, distributing, and promoting a dozen shows have caused our expenses to rise, and we are no longer making ends meet. We're rapidly eating through our reserves, and soon they'll be gone, and we'll have to cut back many of our shows. We might even have to shut down altogether. That's why it's crucial we hear from you right now. If you haven't yet become a supporter, please do so now. If you are a supporter, please prayerfully consider increasing your support at this time. Please visit sqpn.com/give today and click the Become a Patron button to make your monthly pledge. Or to give a one-time gift, click the Donate button. When you become a patron, you'll have access to exclusive benefits and several special thank you gifts for supporting StarQuest at different levels. The need is urgent, so please go to sqpn.com/give today. Thank you from all of us at StarQuest, and God bless you. May we hear from you today? So now what we've been watching and reading. So I've been watching a Netflix show called Wu Assassins.
Wu Assassins?
Wu are... It's very heavily steeped in Chinese culture. It's back up a step. It's basically like one of the old style kung fu movies as a TV show.
Okay.
It's a kung fu movie. So it doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense to a Westerner. There's a lot of concepts and things that are really kind of Chinese culture, although it takes place in San Francisco in English. It's all in English. Well, I mean, not all of it. Sometimes people speak Chinese. But it covers a lot of Chinese concepts and Chinese culture, I gather. I'm not all up on it, so I'm not...
I'm going to guess that there's a lot of conventions from Chinese cinema.
Yeah, and I mean, the acting isn't always great, but the kung fu is really cool, and guys fly through the air in improbable ways and all that sort of stuff that you don't expect.
Or you do expect because it's a kung fu movie.
Because it's a kung fu movie. But yeah, there's a lot of wire work going on, you can tell. So the Wu are these spirits of earth, fire, water, and wood.
Elemental spirits.
That's the word I was looking for. Elemental spirits that inhabit different people over time. And then there is the Wu assassin, who embodies the spirit of 1,000 monks. So thousands of years ago, 1,000 monks gave up their spirit to be imbued into one assassin at a time. And there's been a succession of assassins, and now in 2019 you'll be surprised to find out that the last Wu assassin has been chosen, because it's never like in 2019 the 33rd Wu assassin in a line of 1,000 has been chosen.
Right.
It's the last Wu assassin, not the first one either. So his job is to kill the Wu. He is the Wu assassin. But he's a chef. He's just a chef from in Chinatown in San Francisco. And so it's not great.
Is it campy?
It's sort of campy. It's not. So there's a little bit of bloody mess. There's a little bit, like people get shot and that sort of stuff, and there's blood on the floor. And I'm trying to think if there's anything where somebody gets really disemboweling stuff. I don't think there's any of that. No, and I give the standard disclaimer: I have not watched the entire season, so probably I think I've watched 5 episodes. Probably in the 6th episode, there's going to be something completely inappropriate, and people are going to be doing things that I'll be embarrassed that I will have mentioned that I was watching it for. Because that's just how it is when you talk about something in a podcast and you haven't finished it yet. So I do want to give that warning out that that's probably, I haven't watched the whole thing, so I can't vouch for all the content. But so far, it has been okay.
Necessary disclaimer.
Yeah. I mean, it's sort of like, I don't know, you might have seen it on UPN back in the day. It's sort of like at the kind of, I'm trying to think of reference, like it's almost like primetime drama sort of stuff with a little more blood and swearing than they allow on network TV. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
So something a little like that. So it's not like high drama, high quality filmmaking for sure. But if you like kung fu movies, it's actually pretty good. And it stars Catherine Winnick is in it. She was in the Vikings. She was the wife of Ragnar Lothbrok in Vikings.
I still haven't seen Vikings.
Yes,
it's on my list of things I want to watch eventually. Just
I'm in this. Like I've made it to like the second into the second or third season of Vikings so far. I forget.
Oh, wow.
They're shortish seasons, so they're not long seasons.
I go through seasons of watching things, and then seasons where I just don't watch shows at all.
Right. So that's one thing I'm watching, and then I haven't watched a lot of other things. I'm really annoyed how hard it is to be able to rent new movies that are no longer in theaters. You can buy them, but you can't rent them to stream. Really annoying, even for movies that have been out for they've been on streaming for a year. Like, why can't I rent this yet? It really kind of annoys me. Anyway, so I've not been watching a lot of those, but I did watch a trailer for The Mandalorian, which is a new Star Wars series coming this fall on Disney Plus, which is it takes place after the events of Return of the Jedi, before The Force Awakens, so in that 25-year span, I guess it is, and the Mandalorian is a guy who's in armor that looks like Boba Fett's armor. It's not Boba Fett, different guy.
Okay.
It's Mandalorians are a race of people from a planet called Mandalore, and they have armor that they wear that's very distinctive. And this guy is a bounty hunter.
So a bounty hunter like Boba Fett.
Like Boba Fett, but not Boba Fett.
Okay. But it's not Boba Fett.
But I'm
getting the impression that somehow this is not about Boba Fett.
Because Boba Fett is being digested slowly in the stomach of the Sarlacc.
Right. I'd forgotten about that.
Yes. So it's the series is being done by Jon Favreau, who has become one of my favorite Hollywood creators right now. He did that series.
What would I know that he's done?
Well, do you remember the movie where he was the chef with the food truck? I think the movie's called Chef.
You watched that one and I didn't.
Okay. One of my favorite movies. I loved that movie. He acted in it, and I don't know if he directed it, but I think he wrote and acted in it. But he's also he's in the Avenger movies.
Okay.
As one of the characters, but he's also a film producer and director and all these other things.
So he's an actor, director.
Yes. I mean, he was originally an actor, of course, but
right.
Let me see if I can quickly get a picture of him so Melanie can get a remembrance of what this guy has done. So this is Jon Favreau.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen anything with him.
I mean, he's been in a bunch of movies. This is him as a younger guy.
And now you can see how while our tastes overlap, we frequently don't watch the same things. Even things that I would sometimes I'm just not always...
Cowboys and Aliens?
No. I'm not always in the mood to watch something at the end of the day. I don't know. I have to be in the mood or I'm just going to fall asleep.
Right. No, I get that.
Yeah.
So, but in any case, The Mandalorian looks really good. It looks like high quality. They put a lot of money and a lot of time into making this look good, and I'm really hopeful for it.
But it's a show, so I would have to invest time.
Yeah, it's a series, so it'll be 8-10 episodes or something like that.
Oh, okay.
So not 2 hours.
Okay, yeah.
Now, the other thing they announced is that they're making an Obi-Wan Kenobi series starring Ewan McGregor.
Wait, a series like a TV series?
On Disney Plus.
Okay.
So so what they're doing is because Solo wasn't the success they wanted it to be, Disney has shifted, I think, a lot of Star Wars stuff to longer form TV series, streaming series. You can't really call it TV series anymore because it's not really a TV. Streaming series. So they're longer so it's 10 episodes at an hour each. So it's really 10 hours. It's almost like a trilogy.
I mean, in theory, I really like the idea because I think that a lot of stories work better in a sort of a longer form than a movie, 2 hours or gosh, now stretching things
an hour and
3 hours.
Well, or an hour and 15 minutes. Some movies are. They make them really short.
Right. It's sometimes it's not enough time to tell the story, and then a trilogy is just kind of clunky, and sometimes even that, because a trilogy each part has to have sort of a beginning, middle, and end, its own coherent story arc. Whereas a series can have, cliffhangers, and it can have a different sort of momentum and a rhythm and a feel to it.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And you have time to tell a story. That's the great thing it gives you time. And so Ewan McGregor, who played Obi-Wan in the prequels, is going to come back, which fans have been demanding for ages.
He was like the most popular thing, I think, in the prequels.
Yeah. Hello there, he says. And so he's coming back. And then they have other series that they've got on the hook that they're preparing. And they've also got some movies that they have 2 sets of trilogies that they're working. So so lots of Star Wars to come. And we already talked about like the all the Star Trek that's coming. So it's like sort of a golden age for nerds like me who love Star Wars and Star Trek. So that's pretty awesome. So I was really excited about that. To show the kids, they were excited about it. There's apparently a trailer for a new trailer for Star Wars Episode 9, which they showed at this event this past weekend. But they have not released online yet.
And you are like
I'm
in agony.
pulling my hair out.
Yeah.
to see it.
See, I actually kind of prefer to watch things with like go in to see the movie cold without having seen the trailer. So
yeah, I mean, I see that. I sort of even agree with that, but I still want to see it.
Why does this not surprise me?
Yeah, I know. It's my failing. So what have you? So you said you told me earlier you haven't really watched anything.
I haven't really watched anything at all. I don't think. I am still working my way through the tome that is Neil Stephenson's Fall.
She's still falling.
I'm still falling through it. I've only got about 100 pages left, so I should be able to finish it like today or tomorrow. Probably tomorrow, unless I stay up really late, which could happen. While I was at the orthodontist with Sophie, I try to use these like longer appointments to actually get reading done that requires a little bit more focus, and that I'm often too tired to do at the end of the day. So I took a book of essays with me by the Catholic poet Dana Gioia. And I read a really interesting essay about manuscript, like the artifact of a manuscript, like poetic manuscripts. It's kind of geeky and nerdy, but yeah, it's geeky.
Yeah, it's fine.
And I really, it was very thoughtful. It was very thought provoking. And I kind of feel like I want to go back and read it again almost, except it was long. And I don't have that much time for reading as I would like.
Right. Well, yeah, you've kind of moved on to other things that have captured your attention, like the thing about kids and learning to read and that sort of stuff.
Oh yeah, I fell into a long form article this weekend about how kids learn how to read and how schools are doing it wrong, or not all schools, of course, but a lot of schools have bought into this philosophy of education that just doesn't match up with the science. But yeah, I geeked out on that. I geek out on educational philosophy and poetics.
Maybe we'll talk about that at more length someday.
Right.
Once you've digested it all. So one of the things we wanted to talk about this week, sort of in a little bit longer form, was this blog post you wrote on your website, thewindarksea.com, called Podcasts with Kids. Now, we have a vested interest in podcasting, obviously.
A little bit.
Yes, we do this podcast together, of course, but I also run a podcast network, so there's a bit of a vested interest. But you've obviously.
But mostly, I wrote this because I spend a lot of time listening to podcasts with kids, and I thought it would be fun to share with my readers some of what I enjoy listening to. And I was kind of hoping that maybe some people would share with me podcasts that they listen to with their kids. So far, nobody's bit on my hook.
So maybe some listeners will. But the interesting thing is, like, only 2 of the podcasts you list are podcasts that are part of StarQuest. So a lot of these are they cover a wider gamut. So let's talk about some of them. So the first one you mentioned is American Catholic History, which is a StarQuest podcast.
I love it. The kids love it.
Yes.
It's a great podcast. You should totally listen. It's awesome.
It's each episode is less than 10 minutes, usually less than 10 minutes, done by our friends Tom and Noelle Crow. They're a married couple. They have a great presence on the microphone. I mean, they have a really good dynamic and chemistry, of course, and the topics are fascinating because they're people you may have heard, probably haven't heard of.
All the stuff that I never learned in Catholic school.
Like, how did you know that as the latest episode, did you know that the second American Catholic priest ordained in America was born a Russian prince?
I really, really can't wait to listen to that episode.
that one is good. Or, Danny Thomas and how he started the St. Jude's Children's Hospital after having made a promise to St. Jude. I mean, just it runs the gamut. And some of the fascinating women, Brent, was it Elizabeth Brent was last week? I think she was a woman in Maryland who at the time after the Revolutionary War, no, before was
before
a colony,
the Revolutionary War, at the time of the English Civil War,
right? Who was one of the largest landowners in Maryland, and Margaret Brent, and she had the right to vote. She won herself the right to vote in the legislature because she was a landowner in her own right, not her husband, her.
In fact, she never married.
She never married. So yeah, it was just like, and she was Catholic, of course, and in Maryland. And it was just fascinating, like all these stories. So I really enjoyed that. So the American Catholic History, you can check that out. Then you had another one, Classics for Kids. What's that one?
So Classics for Kids is produced by Cincinnati Public Radio, and I don't even know how I found it. I have no idea how I found it, but every episode is exactly 6 minutes long, and they come in like little series, usually 4 episodes, sometimes 5. I think maybe 1 or 2 of them are 3 episodes long. Most of the time, the series focuses on a composer. So they'll do
a bio.
The first episode will be, sort of a bio, but they'll play little snippets of representative bits of the composer's work, sort of interspersed with short anecdotes about their life, a quick bio. And they'll talk a little bit about their work. Then in the next episode, they might focus on one particular, kind of composition. This particular composer did operas. And so they'll talk about what an opera is, and they'll talk about some of the operas that composer did. And then in the next episode, they might focus on a theme. And then they might talk about like other composers who do pieces on that theme. Like there was one that was about sleigh rides in music. And so they did a whole bunch of different composers who had done pieces of music about sleigh rides. And so basically, if you listen to it, you get introduced to composers and their bios and their principal works, but you also learn about different kinds of music. What is a sonata? What is a concerto? What is an opera? Et cetera, et cetera. And I've learned a lot about music. It helps you to listen and pay attention to particular themes or particular instruments. It's really informative. And I kind of binge listen to it while I'm cooking, especially. It's good for like queuing up a whole bunch of episodes and listening to them boom, 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 because each one is 6 minutes long.
And that actually is a lot like the next one, which you've got listed here, which I often hear you listening to while you're cooking, the Daily Poem.
I love the Daily Poem podcast. It's awesome. So it was started by the Circe Institute's Close Reads podcast network, which they started off reading, I think, like novels and epic poems and like big works of fiction. And the Close Reads podcast sort of will take a book like Brideshead Revisited or the Odyssey, and they'll read it and they'll do like an episode per chapter or an episode per book or whatever. And so very close, dense reading. But then a spinoff podcast that they did was the Daily Poem podcast. And it's great. Each episode is about 10 minutes or less. A lot of them average 5 or 6 minutes. Occasionally they'll do something a little bit longer with a longer poem. So they'll introduce the poet, then they'll read the poem, then they'll have a little conversation about the poem. Like they'll maybe talk about the form if it's a sonnet, or they might talk about the rhyme scheme, or they might talk about the images or the particular poetic devices that the poet is using. And then they'll usually read the poem again if it's not too long. I think in the first season or so, like the first few months, they just read the poem and they didn't really do any talking about it. And it sort of over time, they started to like realize that they had time to, say something about it. And sometimes it's sort of personal reader notes. They don't do an in-depth, close reading of the poem. It's kind of open-ended, like, we'll give you a couple of things to think about, but you really should go find the poem, read it on your own, look at it on what it looks like on the page. But it's enough to sort of whet your appetite. And I love poetry. I've studied poetry, and I've been introduced to a whole bunch of poets that I didn't know about. I mean, they do a range of poets from classic, Shakespeare, John Donne, George Herbert, etc., to modern poets, to contemporary poets who are writing right now and publishing right now. And that's kind of exciting because I know a lot of the classic poets and the modern poets, but I don't know a lot about contemporary poetry. And so I love learning about what's being written now.
Cool. So those are sort of go together, the classics for kids and the daily poem. But there's also faith-based stuff. So like you do the daily readings from the New American Bible occasionally.
Yeah, I don't do it every day, but because I actually try to read them to the kids myself. But sometimes we don't get around to it, and
because we're going somewhere or something. Yeah,
and I really like it's put out by the USCCB, the Conference of Catholic Bishops for the United States, and it's just they basically just read the readings for the day. First reading, Psalm. Second reading, if it's a Sunday, and Gospel. No commentary, nothing like that.
Just the reading.
Just the readings.
Okay. Just the facts, ma'am. So, and then another StarQuest podcast, right? Is on your list. Mysterious World.
Oh, Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World. My kids love it. Now, not all of the episodes are kid friendly.
No.
In fact, some of them are definitely not kid friendly. So this is one you want to use some discretion
right
about. Sometimes I will pre-listen to it, and like some of the topics I think this does not look like it's kid friendly, and I'll stay away.
We did one on the Charles Manson murders recently. That would obviously not be one.
And even some of the ones that look like they might be kind of a safe topic, occasionally they stray into like touching on subject matter that's a little bit more sensitive.
And I'll be honest. So I co-host this with Jimmy, and one of the things we try to do is put disclaimers at the beginning when there's content, even when there is content that could be scary or gory or upsetting or disturbing. Jimmy tries to stay away from that sort of detail and try to keep it rational, almost clinical.
Right, it's not sensationalist,
right,
at all. It's very much sort of
that's
reasonable,
right? And that's most of the true crime ones are like that. There's some true crime ones where we get into that sort of stuff, and it's safe enough to steer from that. Older high school kids will probably be fine with it. There's a lot of we do at least one UFO episode a month, and those are sometimes fun. One of them, the Skinwalker Ranch episode, is one of our most popular episodes ever, and I don't know that our younger kids could not listen to it. Older kids, older kids, especially kids who are used to watching scarier movies or more intense movies, would probably be okay. But
our older kids actually tend to be
a little more sensitive.
Isabella and Sophia. I mean, Sophia got freaked out about the Beth Sphere episode.
Yeah, which was a great episode.
It was awesome, and Bella loved it. Sophie her imagination kind of started getting working, and she just got a little bit uptight.
But then there were other ones like the Knights Templar. That one.
There's a lot of good faith-based episodes too.
So then,
the Dead Sea Scrolls,
the Voynich manuscript.
But that's not really faith.
No. I'm thinking of historical ones as well. So stuff that comes out of history or out of faith. So there's a lot of cool stuff like that. There's a lot. Jimmy is so the Egyptian ones are always really interesting, really good.
Who was King Tut murdered?
Was he murdered?
That one was fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I did it. It's an in joke. It's there's a someone in Egypt whose name is Aye. So I did it. So obviously I go on at length at that one because that's what I'm on, and I realize that part of the appeal is that they can hear me speaking in the podcast.
That is definitely a huge part of the appeal. Oh, it's kind of a novelty, like, ooh, we can actually hear what Daddy does all day in that closed up in the office when we're supposed to be quiet while he's podcasting. Yeah. This is what he's recording. That's right. Kind of cool.
Yep. So Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World, and then this next one is about reading, right? Hey Ray reads to you.
It's actually it's kind of like LibriVox, which is basically just people reading books.
Okay.
Except it's a podcast. So it's a woman who's, I'm guessing K Ray is a handle and not her name.
Yeah.
But she just reads classic kids novels. And just like one episode per chapter. And she's read a whole bunch. So far, we've only listened to 2 novels. We listened to the Saturdays and the
Melodies.
Yeah, the Melodies series is the series by Elizabeth Enright. The first book is the Saturdays. The second is the 4-Story Mistake. And we loved. I read that to the kids a couple years ago, but we were looking for something that we could listen to in the car. Not all the kids remembered reading it, and so it seemed like a really good car podcast.
Yeah, it's different from an audiobook. It's not as slick and professionally produced.
Right. It's definitely not slick like an audiobook. It's definitely like going to the library and having story time. You know, occasionally she stumbles over a sentence. She goes back to the beginning of the sentence she reads. Sometimes her pages get stuck together, or her cat makes a noise, or something like.
But that's podcasting,
right? And it's human. It's fun. She's got a very nice voice.
Yeah.
And I really love the stories, and it's fun.
And then the last one is this, the Moby Dick Big Read.
Yes. So when we went to Mystic Seaport some time ago, they had this cool video of whaling. Like
it was historical film footage of actual whaling going on decades ago.
Right, and they had it playing on a loop on a monitor in the exhibit on whaling. But instead of having a voiceover that like described the whaling, what they did is they excerpted passages from Herman Melville's novel Moby Dick, in which Melville describes what whalers do.
And they edited the film to go along with what Melville was describing.
And the fact is that I read Moby Dick when I was in college, and I was one of the few people in my class who actually really liked the novel. A lot of people complain because it's really long and it's got a lot of like technical stuff about whaling. And I actually found all that stuff fascinating. And Melville is just, I think he's one of the great novelists in the English language. His command of English is just beautiful. His language is poetic. His descriptions are sometimes breathtaking. And the novel, as we started to listen to the podcast, I had forgotten how funny it is. Like, it's laugh out loud funny a lot of the time, especially like the stuff with Queequeg and Ishmael gets into the bed with him. And, oh, it's hilarious. Ben loved it. Now, this podcast is really interesting. It started off as, I think, an art exhibition in England of like art associated with a novel. And then somebody associated with that had this idea of having people just read the novel. And it's a weird mixture of like every chapter is read by a different reader. And some of them are big time stars.
Like celebrities.
Like movie stars, Shakespearean actors. And then some of them are just like
Joe Schmo,
everyday guy. Most of the voices are British. Some of them are American, but it's kind of interesting hearing like one of the great American novels read by British people with the accents. Some of the readers are a little bit rough. Some of the like recordings are not quite as high a quality.
It makes you wonder how these recorded. Yeah.
Right. But I think that's kind of part of the charm of it in a way, because it's got this, it feels very authentic.
Well, it's not going to get boring because it's changing every chapter.
Right. It's not boring. I mean, sometimes you kind of wish that you could stick with a particular reader, because some of the readers are really good. And I think we listened to, I don't know, maybe a dozen chapters or so, and then I kind of got sidetracked and started listening to something else and doing other things. But I definitely want to come back to it because it's really enjoyable.
So those are some good podcasts. And, and like you said, you were always looking for new ones. I mean, some of these will end and we'll find something else to add.
I would especially love more history podcasts with the kids. But I'm a little bit wary about just
any history podcast
jumping in, because sometimes there's stuff in history that's not especially kid friendly, and it's hard to tell just by looking what is going to suddenly jump into you're suddenly flailing around talking about inappropriate relationships and too much graphic details. Yes. And so I would love to have recommendations of people who listen to podcasts, especially if they listen to them with their kids. What do you think is kid friendly?
Yeah. So let us know. We want to hear from you. You can email us at bets@sqpn.com, BETTS. And in fact, on any of the stuff we've talked about today, we'd love to hear from you. I think that's about it for us this time. So go to sqpn.com/bets, BETTS, or the SQPN Facebook page at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, or send us that email to bets, BETTS, @sqpn.com. We'd love to hear from you. You can find the relevant links from the discussion. I'll put the link to Melanie's blog post on the show notes at sqpn.com, as well as the links to the other things we mentioned, so that you can check those out. And if you can, we'd really appreciate if you could write a review at Apple Podcasts and share the podcast with your friends. That helps us grow our audience. You don't know how much it makes a difference when you write a review to get the news out about the podcast. So we really do appreciate that if you take the time to do that. And you can find the link to where to do that on our show notes at sqpn.com/bets. So until next time, I'm Don Bettinelli.
And I'm Melanie Bettinelli.
Thank you for listening to Raising the Bets on StarQuest.